Good afternoon and welcome to Tuesday afternoon with the SBDC. Today we're collaborating with the University of Georgia on the Understanding the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. But before we do that, let me share a little bit of information with you about the SBDC.
Has your business been affected by COVID-19? The Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center is available to assist entrepreneurs and small businesses in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The VISBDC is sustained by the University of the Virgin Islands and the U.S. Small Business Administration and collaborates with local agencies to support the small business community. The VISBDC is nationally accredited and provides free consulting, business education training, and technical assistance. Attend workshops with subject matter experts from both the public and private sector. From idea generation to exit strategies, the staff at the VISBDC is ready to assist you. Now is the time to contact them, so don't wait. Call or email them to find out how they can help your business grow and succeed.
Okay, due to technical difficulties, we'll only have that one video. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to the SBDC's webinar. My name is Mary Jo Williams, and I am the Network Training Coordinator at the Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center. And for today's presentation, we will ask you to put your questions in the chat, and they'll be answered at the end. We will also share a copy of the presentation at the end. And I will introduce our presenters for today. Our presenters are Mr. Glenn Cruz. Glenn brings over 30 years of management experience, including executive management in large and small and startup companies. Prior to joining the University of Georgia SBDC, Mr. Cruz was an account executive with Bearcom Wireless in Atlanta, where he was responsible for developing a new customer base from prospects in the Atlanta market. His areas of specialization are business and market development, program management, strategic account planning, and general management. Mr. Cruz has worked in small businesses that focused on site leasing, Wi-Fi hotspots, corporate network management, and accounting software solutions. He has experience working in the healthcare, hospitality, telecommunications, utility markets, and with internet-based services, including SaaS. Mr. Cruz is also the area director of the Gwinnett office. Along with Mr. Cruz is Mr. Howard Dent III. Howard is a business consultant in the Gwinnett office of the Georgia SBDC. His work with the SBDC is buoyed by his belief that real success is the success you share. His mission is to use his 25+ years of experience in banking, finance, and entrepreneurship to help aspiring entrepreneurs start and grow their business and help existing owners take their businesses to the next level. Prior to transitioning from corporate America, Mr. Dent held positions at various international financial institutions, including Credit Suisse, Wells Fargo Commercial Capital, and Wells Fargo Bank. Before joining Wells Fargo, Mr. Dent was founding principal and president of a mortgage finance company where he oversaw accounting, finance, marketing, and human resources functions. Prior to that, Mr. Dent started a specialty finance-focused business consultancy. Mr. Dent started his career with Accenture as a technology consultant in their financial markets division. With that, I give you Mr. Glenn Cruz and Mr. Howard Dent. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mary Jo. Howard, I'll speak for Howard. Howard will speak for himself a little bit later on, but Howard will be watching the questions that you've got in the chat room. So like Mary Jo said, please, any questions you've got, post them there. If something is timely, Howard will interrupt me and have me go back and try to either fix something I broke or perhaps clarify something that I wasn't very clear on. We hope we'll be pretty hopefully we'll be pretty clear on all of this. So we are here to talk to you today at the invitation of our friends down in Virgin Islands. Turns out that we found out Mary Jo's actually an Atlanta native. So both Howard and I work in the Atlanta metro area. So we've got a relationship that we weren't aware of before we had a chance to meet with Mary Jo in preparation for today. Howard and I have been working for really since the onset of the pandemic on SBA responses, disaster programs, and we've done a number of these webinars jointly, and we're pleased to be with you all today. Just to, you'll see the link here to the visbdc.org website. That's always a good link to bookmark. Your local SBDC offices are great resources for small businesses, as Mary Jo showed in that video. And particularly during this pandemic, and then as we emerge from it, lean on them heavily. That's what we're here for to help you with. So what I want to really kick off before we get into the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, I wanted to kind of give a little bit of a background on how that came to be, how that particular fund came to be. On March 11th, President Biden signed into law the American Rescue Plan. Inside of that was a section called Title V. This was a Committee on Small Business, and this essentially is funding and money being set aside for SBA to administer programs inside of that Title V portion of that legislation. That legislation made modifications or changes to the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Plan, that's been in place since March of last year. Added some additional money for targeted emergency injury disaster loans. You're going to hear a lot of little acronyms throughout today's presentation, so hopefully we'll keep those straight for you. Also added some additional money and made a few changes to the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. That program actually launched yesterday or relaunched yesterday with a portal. And then Restaurant Revitalization Fund was established in this act, and that's what we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about today. One other thing about that, and this is a program that you may see in the marketplace in the Virgin Islands, and we'll see here around the rest of the United States, is that program, that rescue plan, put money together for something called the Navigator Pilot Program, and that's something that SBA will be administering with some of its resource partners. We are one of those. The SBDC is one of the resource partners, and that is going to be reaching out to traditionally disadvantaged businesses and help them navigate through some of the funding options and build awareness and create awareness with regard to some of the programs that the SBA is administering. So that's a nice focus on making certain that small businesses that maybe sometimes get overlooked will not be going forward. There are also sprinkled throughout that American Rescue Plan legislation some non-SBA programs that impact small businesses. So there's some agriculture programs that are out there that are quite robust. We won't go into any detail on that. The Emergency Rental Assistance Program for people who are arrears on their residential rental payments, some money set aside for that. There's a state small business credit initiative that's going to be funded at the state level, I suspect also at the territory level for the USVI. And then extension of some of the unemployment provisions, the unemployment FFCRA unemployment provisions, and then credits for paid sick leave and family leave. Continuation of some of those programs that we saw rolled out last year in 2020, and in recognition of the fact that this pandemic has taken far longer to get to the point where we are today than they had ever anticipated in prior legislative efforts. The other is there's an employee retention credit that can be taken to reduce your federal tax withholding. That is now, you are now eligible to participate in that if you have a PPP loan, and that was not the case previously. So that's now opening up some of these programs that had not previously been available or had been maybe excluded if you had received a PPP loan. You're now going to be eligible for taking that ERTC or CT credit. And then there's some tax exemption provisions, and we're going to talk about that with regard to the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. There's been some confusion, had been some confusion about the PPP and EIDL programs that have been cleaned up in subsequent legislation, but they've been very clear in this piece that the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, any award that you get out of that is not going to have tax ramifications for the awardee. I do want to do a little bit of an update on the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant because that just program, they started taking applications on April 8th, and frankly, the platform just failed miserably on that day. So they took it down after it being up for about 3 to 4 hours. That portal relaunched yesterday at noon, and by all accounts, it's operating pretty smoothly. I've got a couple clients who gave me some feedback and said it actually went along quite well. So that's good news, and hope that portends well for the launch of the RRF. Before the relaunch of that, they issued some FAQs and user guides before that relaunch. A couple clarifications: if this is a program that you are contemplating or looking at, or you know somebody who is, you might pass along to them that if they had an account set up prior to that April 8th launch, that account still exists. Just because you couldn't get an application in, the fact that you had set the account up was still in place. So that was going to be available when that portal reopened yesterday. And they also assured everybody, nobody got past the first page. Nobody got a first mover advantage. I've seen some articles. I've had people send me emails that said, oh, certain people are way ahead. They've already having their grants being processed. Not true. Nobody got through on the SVOG portal. So nobody got an advantage with regard to getting in and getting something uploaded while everybody else was frustrated about doing so. Once that portal reopens, this is going to be very similar to what happens when the RRF, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund portal opens up. You can apply at any time. There are some prioritization periods, but you can apply at any time. And in fact, we encourage anybody who's applying for SVOG or RRF to apply quickly. Be ready to go when that portal opens, because your applications are going to be processed within your priority period. So you want to get the first mover advantage, you need to basically get your application in quickly. That will actually be the same modus operandi going forward with RRF. So be prepared for it. We now have a date for when the RRF portal will open as well. We'll touch that on a future slide. And one of the reasons for recapping this SVOG is if you're thinking about SVOG or RRF, do a little homework on it, do a little math on it, because you can only apply for one. If you've applied for SVOG, you will not have your RRF application processed. So if you were contemplating both, you might want to go through the calculations, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. And there's some tools out there for you to go through the calculation to size your award. And you want to make an informed decision so you don't find yourself disappointed because you chose the wrong program because it didn't afford you nearly as much. What you thought was going to be a better deal for you wasn't, in fact. So we encourage people to do their homework. So with that, I'm actually going to, in the interest of bandwidth, I'm going to go off my video, but we'll keep sharing my screen with you. And we'll come back a little bit later when we do questions and answers at the end. So let's jump right into the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. The fund is $28.6 billion. There was some money added at the very end of that legislative process. It went from 25 to 28.6 billion. At least $5 billion will go to entities with less than 500K in gross receipts. So there's carve-outs and there's set-asides for businesses who are certain, at different sizes. So in addition to that $5 billion, there's another $4 billion that's set aside for applicants that are just a little above that, $500,001 to 1.5 million. And then they've taken an additional 500 million and set it aside for those with gross receipts below $50,000. So you can see that they have been set asides to accommodate with the anticipation that people of different sizes will apply for this. And they want to make certain that there's money available for those businesses. And then the balance will be distributed in an equitable manner is the phraseology inside of the legislation. The SBA reserves the right to reallocate these funds at its own discretion. SBA has been fairly active in going in and making some changes if they think they need to do that, because some businesses aren't getting a fair shake or access to funds. So it behooves you to kind of stay in touch and monitor what's going on inside of SBA with these programs. And there's a way to register to get notifications of any changes. So just some program information. If you have a PPP loan, you'd understand this term covered period. Covered period was that time from where you received your money and then the end date of when you had to spend it. The legislation offered they originally said that the covered period would go through December 31st of this year, but gave SBA an option to extend that covered period all the way out to March 11th, 2023. That's 2 years after that legislation was signed into law, and SBA has taken that option. And so that covered period is now going to end on March 11th of 2023. Information on this, you'll receive a copy of this presentation deck when it's done. It'll be in the form of a PDF, but these should be active hypertext links inside of that deck we're going to send you. So you don't need to try to scribble this down. You're going to get a copy of this when we finish. And Howard may even post some of these in the chat room as we move along too. But this would be a good site to go if you're looking at this participating in the RRF. Would be go ahead and bookmark that. This is basically information about that fund. On that site, you can then navigate over to Form 3172, which is an application sample. You can download that at that link that we're giving you here as well. I'd encourage you to do it because you're going to understand the kind of information you're going to have to gather before you get into the portal. You will not submit paper forms. They're not going to be accepting paper applications, but that form will be available digitally through the portal. And the form, you can go ahead and fill it all out so you'll have the numbers and the information that you need to put together readily available when that portal opens. And you can just basically transpose that directly from your form into the digital application. SBA announced this morning, so this is very timely webinar because they announced that portal will open next Monday at noon Eastern Daylight Time. So Monday, May 3rd, the portal is gonna open up. Also, you'll be able to register, which is get your business information in. You can't apply yet, but starting on Friday at 9 a.m., this Friday at 9 a.m., you'll be able to go ahead and register your company, get your information in, get all that information started so you'll be in the queue and ready to go with the application when noon strikes on May 3rd, next Monday. So just like if you participated in PPP or EIDL, there are limitations, restrictions on the use of funds that you get out of this particular award. They are very, very loose restrictions, though. They are very generous in what they will permit as far as use of funds. You can read all of these, anything to do with payroll, rent and utilities. That's what PPP originally was only for, but they're expanding this to maintenance expenses, supplies, basically any inventory you've got associated with your food or beverage service, any operational expenses. It's really almost easier to define what you can't do with it. What you can't do with it is you can't expand your business. You can't go buy land. You can't go buy a building. You can't retire debt. So just think of it, it has to be on the operating expense side. And on the operating expense side, virtually every operating expense is going to be a permissible use of the funds. There is one caveat: if you get an award and you fail to use them within this covered period, again, a very generous covered period, again, through March 11th of 2023, so almost 2 full years. Or if you cease operations, you must return unused funds to the Treasury. So if you get a fund, let's say they give you $500,000 and you decide, you know what, I don't even want to try this anymore, but boy, I'm glad I got that $500,000. The government's going to come back after you and say, you need to return what you haven't used. Now, if you've used it to make good on some debts that you had, maybe pay some back payroll, pay some back taxes, pay something that was permitted use, that could be reduced. But again, you're not able to basically take, for lack of a better term, take the money and run or take the money and close either. So what they really want to do is they want to put this money out there to revitalize a restaurant. So want it to be used to get your businesses started back up. The eligible entities, again, very generous definition of a type of business that is eligible for this fund, all the way down to food trucks. This could be a corner hot dog stand, a corner taco stand. Street vendors that serve food and beverage would be eligible. I highlighted that last 2.5 sentences, or last two to three sentences on that paragraph. Basically, any purpose or place at which the public or patrons assemble for the primary purpose of being served food or drink is going to be eligible. So if you're selling food or drink to the public, you're going to be an eligible entity, eligible for these funds. Now, there is going to be a prioritization of awards for the RRF. In the first 20 days, the only grants that will be processed and awarded will be to these three classes of businesses: woman-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, or disadvantaged business entities. And that's a fairly broad definition. We'll go into a little more detail on that in subsequent slides. But there is going to be this prioritization for these traditionally potentially overlooked businesses due to ownership. So they're going to make certain that they're at the first of the line, first in the queue, first bite at the apple, if you will. If you're a franchise owner, even though might be a McDonald's, or it might be Burger King or whatever, those are big stateside restaurants, or franchises, that could be, those are very large companies that they in themselves, the franchisors, the franchise holder would not necessarily be eligible, but franchisees will be able to. So as long as you meet all the other program requirements, which is size of employees, and some of those other eligibility requirements. If you're in bankruptcy, you actually can participate if you filed either a Chapter 11, 12, or 13 bankruptcy, and you have an approved plan of reorganization, in other words, a court-approved workout plan, then you're going to be able to qualify for the fund. Again, this program is really written large so that if you've been hit, and a lot of restaurants have been hit, probably one of the hardest segments, other than some of the performance venues that the SVOG covers, have been hit really, really hard with the constraints that have been applied on number of people attending, seating arrangements, and all of that. And they understood that some of those businesses may have had to protect themselves from foreclosure or other illegal activity, needed to maybe file bankruptcy protection. But if you've done that and you're under a reorganization plan, you can still get this fund. Now, if you've permanently closed, you're not going to get it. That kind of goes back to the payback if you close subsequent to getting funded. If you file a Chapter 7, which is liquidation and bankruptcy, you're not, that basically says you're shutting down. So you're not going to get a grant or an award in that place. And then if you're in bankruptcy, but you're not under an approved plan of reorganization yet, then you wouldn't be eligible either. So this is fairly liberal. I haven't seen SBA do this with a program where you can be in a bankruptcy situation with a plan of reorganization and get funded. So that's, again, another very, very generous and liberal approach to this program. If you had a Paycheck Protection Program loan, which a lot of restaurants did, that would be either year, first draw that you could have gotten last year, or second draw that you've gotten this year. We refer to those as PPP1, PPP2 loans. If you've got loans, the expectation is that you're going to get those forgiven. I happened to look at the SBA report from about a week ago on forgiveness. 99.7% of loan forgiveness applications have been forgiven, and the amounts. So they're forgiving virtually all loans. They've generally liberalized those rules about forgiveness to the point where just about everybody with a PPP loan is going to be able to qualify for full forgiveness, which in fact makes that a grant. And so what they're doing here is saying, if you've got a PPP loan, we're going to presume that you're going to get it forgiven. And as a result of that, we're going to subtract that amount of money from your calculated award size and reduce that award accordingly, because you're going to they don't want to have double enrichment, if you will, or get double grant coverage. The other thing is when they approve your RRF application, if you've got a PPP loan either in process or you send one in, they're going to reject it, because they're going to pull that back anyway. So once they've given you an award, they're basically saying that's it, no more PPP loans. So just be aware of that. I would not stop with a PPP loan. If you've got one in progress, I go ahead and take that money, because I think it will take a little while for SBA to work through these all these applications they're going to get for the restaurant funds. The other thing is, we mentioned this earlier, is you cannot have applied for or received an SVOG grant or SVOG from SBA. You can't get a bite from both apples, so to speak. Grants have got limits in aggregate, $10 million. That could be one location or multiple locations. There is a limit on number of locations. You can't have more than 20 individual locations. You're restricted to that. You're also restricted to $5 million per location. So let's say you've got one super restaurant and then some small satellites. And that super restaurant, when you go through the calculation, you say, gosh, I can get $7 million out of that based on these calculations. That's going to be contained. That's going to be truncated at 5 million because you can't have more than 5 million per location when the businesses are affiliated with a parent company. And those affiliation rules are going to follow just as they did for PPP and EIDL loans, and consistent with everything SBA has been doing with regard to what makes a business an affiliate. These are the entities that are excluded: state or local government owned or operated businesses. If you have more than 20 locations, again, that SVOG restriction comes in. No publicly traded companies can apply. If you're permanently closed, we've already covered that. It cannot apply. Nonprofits are not eligible for this particular program. If you go through the calculation and you're relatively small, the calculation says the most I can qualify is some number less than $1,000, you're not going to get anything out of it. They're not going to go below $1,000 on the awards. I don't know why they picked that. I think it makes a little bit of logical sense to say that, is it really going to make enough of a difference for a business? And also, I think just to keep the paperwork down for some extremely small businesses. So if your child is a sole proprietor and has a lemonade stand, they're probably not going to qualify for an award. That's the only best analogy I could come up with. The other thing is, if for some reason you're in arrears and any kind of federal debt obligation, and you've got your company's name on a Treasury's do not pay list, you will not get paid. So if you're aware of that, I would be working feverishly to remedy that situation. Get your name off of any kind of do not pay list that might have found itself on. Eligible forms of organization. I haven't come up yet with a form of organization that's not eligible. The however you organize yourself is not going to be an impediment for you being able to participate with the RRF. You can see all the way up from C corporations all the way down to independent contractors and self-employed individuals. There is a B corporation designation. Those are corporations that are going to file as either a C or an S corp on their federal filings. B corporations go through some additional qualifications to be determined to be economically responsive. There's a criteria for getting that special designation. I understand there's something like 1,500 or 1,600 of those around. I suspect it doesn't apply to, pretty good chance it doesn't apply to anybody on this call. The timeline. We're already in this 7-day period, it appears, based on the announcement that the SBA made today. 7 days before this public portal launch, which we now is going to be Monday. So I would guess that probably this previous Monday or yesterday, they started bringing in prospective borrowers or applicants to apply to test and validate the portal. So I think coming off of the bad experience they had with the SVOG portal launch, and the fact that it basically just fell flat on its face coming out of starting blocks, they wanted to have the public go through a test period. So notices were sent out to potential pilot participants. I suspect some are actually filling that, applying right now into through the portal in a pilot mode. So this is a beta test, if you will, or a beta plus test, maybe pre-launch test. That period will end on Monday. It appears Monday, May 3rd. That is when that portal will open, and that will open for everybody. Now, you don't have to wait if you're not a priority business. You don't meet one of the qualifications to become a priority business to get funded in that first 21 days. That doesn't mean you can't apply. In fact, you should apply. And the reason is because your application is going to be processed based on the date that the SBA receives it. So even if you're only going to be eligible because of your ownership situation. You don't fall into one of those three broad categories. It still is important for you to get your place in line, because once that day 22 hits and they start processing them, if you were one of the first ones through the gate when that portal opens on Monday, then your application is going to be processed first. So there's the priority period in which you will participate, but then within that, there's going to be prioritization based on when you got your application in. And then from days 22 on, basically until all the funds are exhausted, all applicants will be processed. But again, they're going to be processed in the order in which the applications are received. So I think I've said that about 3 times. So that's about the time I can hopefully got that across. So get your information together. There's some tools out here that the links we gave you for you to go ahead and pull that information together. And now that we have a date certain on the portal, if you haven't already started collecting some of that data, then that'd be a good weekend project for you to do to be ready to go Monday when that portal opens up. Now, there are 3 different types of calculations that you can go through to calculate your potential award. I do want to point out here, SBA is not responding, not calling the RRF a grant. There's a reason for that. The SVOG is a grant, and in a grant situation, the SBA is prohibited from law to help a small business applicant. So I don't know if this is, I don't know if they did this just for terminology so they could help here, but they have determined that this is not a grant. They're calling it an award. So we'll use their terminology. But in calculating that award calculation, so also to finish that thought, so the SBA will be able to help you with the application process. They're able to help with an SVOG on a technical, like I can't get my password to work, I can't do this or that. But then going in and asking a question about how to do some calculations, SBA is absolutely legally forbidden to help an SVOG applicant. That is not the case here in this. So that designating this an award and not a grant enabled SBA to be able to step in and provide direct assistance to applicants. The calculation for this is actually quite easy. What they're going to do is they're going to take a look at the difference between your 2019 gross receipts, those are your pre-pandemic receipts, full year of operation, and we'll call these businesses legacy businesses since they were in place before January 1. Then you're going to subtract out your 2020 gross receipts. So that would be your during pandemic. And this is to gauge the loss that you've seen at the top end revenue. So these are at gross receipts. These are not at net income. They're not at operating income. They're at gross receipts. So these are your top end numbers that you're going to use to calculate your the impact that the pandemic has had on your business. And then you have to reduce that by your PPP loan amounts. So it's 2019 gross receipts less 2020 gross receipts minus your PPP loan amounts. Calculation 2, this is for applicants that began operations only partially operated during 2019. So they're not going to be what I call the legacy business. They're going to be a new business in 2019. Well, then they don't have a 2019 annual revenue run. So what this calculation does is adjust for that. So you take your average 2019 monthly gross receipts, and the way you calculate that is you calculate the number of months in which you were in business during 2019. So for example, if you were in business only the last 2.5 months, and you could use fractional months, 2.5 months of 2019, and you brought in $250,000 in those 2.5 months. You take that $250,000 of gross receipts divided by that 2.5 months of operation to get to your monthly average run rate for that period of operation, those 2.5 months. That's $100,000 in that example. Then you multiply that by 12 to annualize that amount of money. So you'd be then at $1.2 million. And that's what you'd start as your 2019 annual equivalent revenue to then check against your 2020 gross receipts. And again, you have to subtract off your PPP loan amounts as well. Now, there's this little asterisk here that says that if you only were in partial operation in 2019, you can use this calculation method, or you can use the third and final calculation option. This is for people who began operations in 2020, didn't operate at all in 2019, all the way up through March 10 of 2021. The import of that date, that's the day before the legislation was signed. So that is prior to the legislation being in place. If you started after that, by definition, you're not going to be eligible. But then what you'll do is you'll calculate your total amount spent on all eligible expenses. So that whole list of expenses that we had earlier, you'd total all those up between February 15th up to this date that the legislation was signed. And then you're going to take any money you made out in 2020 or 2021, gross receipts, and then you're going to take out any PPP loans that you might have had as well. So what they're trying to do here is understand you may not have had a gross revenue or much to speak of, but you may have a significant amount of expenses that you incurred between February 15th and March 11th. This is to accommodate that. That's what this calculation is all about. And again, if you were a felon eligible for calculation 2, you could use this calculation. So hopefully you'll be a fan of math here, because you probably want to calculate both ways and see what's going to end up being resulting in the largest amount of award. So some clarifications right out of the box on RRF is the award will not be included as federal taxable income. That was a big issue in PPP and EIDL funds. Actually, PPP and EIDL targeted advance and PPP forgiveness. And there was the debt relief program as well, if you had an existing SBA loan, that essentially that was going to show up as taxable income. Or in the case of a PPP forgiveness, they were going to basically say, if you got those expenses forgiven, you can't take them off your tax. You can't use those as business expenses. Well, that's been fixed. You can now do that with your PPP loans. They're also applying that same logic to the RRF. So you will not have any disadvantaged situation from a tax treatment standpoint. Award will not be included as federal taxable income, and there will be able to deduct any federal tax expenses paid by the awards as long as you use them within those guidelines. The law states, and this is the language that is in place. I think the EAA that was passed on December 27th fixed that for PPP and debt relief. But this language is important. No deduction shall be denied. No tax attribute shall be reduced. No basis increase shall be denied by reason of the exclusion from gross income. Stated simply, however, this money is not going to cause an additional tax burden to you. So they fixed that right in the legislation, and we wanted to be very, very clear about that. So that should be give you a sigh of relief. Should make your tax accountants happy, and certainly make you and the rest of your owners happy as well, or your fellow owners. Just a caution, state and local laws may be different. You have to see what the appropriate agency is to find out what their tax treatment is like. Mary Jo said that she thought that USVI was pretty much always in lockstep with federal tax treatment. So that's likely to be the case for you. I know for us, Howard and I being here in the state of Georgia, the Georgia legislature has passed a law basically providing that same state tax treatment to the federal, to match the federal treatment. The award is added to the basis for S Corp and shareholders, following in line with what that previous slide said. No basis adjustment should be denied. So basically any kind of tax implications or potential tax penalties are removed from this particular program. Now, where do you apply? The best place is directly through the SBA award platform. Here's the link to that site. This will be a hypertext link when we send you the deck. It is still info only at this time. This basically takes you to a landing page, which if you go to click to register, it'll tell you that it's not open, but you can register to get an email as to when that will happen. We just got notified this morning that this Friday, you'll be able to register your business, not apply for a loan, or excuse me, for an award, but you will be able to register your business starting 9 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time on Friday. But this is an information only page at this particular time. The other thing they've done, which is really pretty interesting, I'm going to be interested to see how this process plays out. If you have a point of sale vendor that is part of what the SBA is calling their ecosystem partnership, you'll be able to, in the case of Toast and Square, directly apply from within the POS. In other words, Toast and Square have created an algorithm inside of that point of sale solution to automatically calculate what you need, to pull the information together, calculate what your grant size will be or award size will be, and send that to SBA through an application portal interface API, application programming interface, I'm sorry, to basically go ahead and automatically apply. So that's going to be probably your path of least resistance if you happen to be using either of those two systems. If you're using Clover from Fiserv or Aloha from NCR, they're going to be able to pull reports to assist in that filing. So they don't have they haven't written outside of the POS into that SBA API to, I'm going to kill you with acronyms here, I'm sorry. But they have not automated that process, but they will give you a report out of there. And since that is going to have basically all the information you need to provide the SBA, that's probably your path of least resistance there as well. These people have embedded that application process, either the forms or the data necessary, so they can either push that information directly into the application or directly to you. The other thing is, on the far end of the spectrum, is you can actually pick the phone up, call this 800 number, and apply via phone. Now, here's why you may not want to do that. Is I read the guidance on this, is you'll be able to give them the information they need to fill that out on the phone, fill out the portal information, but you're going to have to email, or not email, you're going to have to snail mail. You're going to have to drop that in through the regular mail, all of your supporting forms. And that there's going to be no action on your application until those forms are received. So that's going to be probably your slowest process, the biggest potential for error. And so I'd stay away from that if you, unless you absolutely do not have access to the internet or technology to allow you to fill this in online. In fact, I would encourage you to, at that instance, reach out to your SBDC office. I'm sure they'll be able to assist you either by letting you know where you can go get access to the internet via public libraries or some other public access areas. Reach out to them; they'll be able to give you some assistance. They're a great resource. We are a great resource, but your VI SBDC folks will be able to help you with that. So documentation you need to start pulling together. You complete inside of the grant platform, SBA Form 3172. We provided a link on where to get that earlier on. You've got to complete it, initial it, and when they say signed, it's e-signed. You're going to do that digitally, but you can get that form and you can fill it out in advance. So you think of it as a planning document, so that when that portal opens, you've got that information readily available and you can enter it into the digital form through 3172. And the other thing you're going to have to fill out is IRS Form 4506T. That's an authorization for them to pull your tax returns. That's to go in and verify the numbers that you're providing them through the IRS. They will do that, and but you can fill that out. You'll fill that out digitally through the grant platform. But once again, you could download that form if you want to complete it. The 4506 is pretty simple. It's just a few signatures. You're providing Social Security or EIN information, just enough information so they know who you are, how you paid your taxes, and where they can go to pull those returns. And then any of the following documents that demonstrate gross receipts. They like to see your tax returns. They would prefer it be your business tax returns, or if you're filing as a sole proprietor and using Schedule C, that you use a Schedule C, or if you're a farm and you use Schedule F, they would prefer to see those forms, largely because they know you're going to file those with the IRS and there's a way for them to go check them and validate them. But if you don't have those, or if you're a partnership, you would do your Form 1065. But if you don't have those available, you can provide bank statements for the periods that we're talking about. You can even use your own internal reports. Let's say you're using QuickBooks or some other software solution, you could actually pull those documents. We're going to touch a little bit on what you've got to provide them under that application option number 3. If you decide to go that direction, that will greatly simplify your life as far as using these documents. You can see, as kind of as you move away from the tax returns, they become less reliable documents in the eyes of the SBA. But they will take your point of sale reports out of your POS system as well. So even if you're not one of the users of one of those four ecosystem partners, you could use your SBA, you could use your sale point of sale reports to apply. Now, for calculations 1 and 2, this is for calculation 1 is what we called legacy businesses before January 1, 2019, in operation before then. Again, restatement of those first two forms, 3172, 4506, and then basically those forms we just went through here. But this is more specifically the types of forms. So your gross receipts from your tax returns in 2019, 3 months of bank statements, and then your 2020 gross receipts. Again, they prefer this federal tax returns were filed or a point of sale report. They have much more confidence in that. But if you've got externally prepared financial statements that you get from an accountant, they'll take them, but they're going to add a little more scrutiny on that. And that's why they're saying, be careful, that could delay your review by 14 days. And I do think in this program, time is going to be of the essence for all applicants. And here's why you may not want to use Calc 3 if you don't have to. Now, if you weren't in business before January 1 of 2020, you have no choice but to use Calc 3 because you're probably not going to get, you're not going to qualify for an award because you don't using your 2019 calculation. But you can see there's a significant amount of additional information you've got to pull here because you've got to itemize your expense doc. You got to document all of those expenses that you're using because again, that calculation now is how much money have you spent in that use of permitted use of funds categories, less whatever you made 2021 through 2020 and 2021, less any PPP that you've got. So you've got to document those expenses as opposed to only having to document your top end revenue. So just a lot more detail that you'll have to go through. And there's this little CPA comfort letter that they talk about that they prefer. And that's a letter from a CPA. It's short of an audit, but it's basically a CPA testifying, attesting to the fact that the documents that are being submitted, that he's reviewed them, they're accurate to the best of his knowledge or her knowledge. And that gives the SBA some comfort from the CPA, from a CPA, that in fact, these numbers are good, they're accurate, and they can be relied upon. So if you do go that direction, that CPA comfort letter is probably your best silver bullet, the best possibility to protect yourself against any disappointment on down the road. So there's some special cases. We listed earlier on the types of entities that were eligible for the RRF. Included in that were brew pubs, a tasting room, tap rooms, brewery, wineries with tasting rooms, distilleries, or bakeries. In order for you to qualify, you have to show that you had at least 33% of your gross revenue from on sale. Now, when on sale, I mean sales to the public directly from your principal business. So if you have a donut place and you supply donuts to several grocery stores around the area or breakfast places around the area, you're going to have to show that at least 33% of your gross revenue came from direct sale to the public on premise. So where I grew up, there were places where you could sell liquor by the drink and then you could sell liquor to carry out. The difference was liquor by the drink was on sale, liquor to carry out was off sale. Using that terminology here, on sale, you have to have 30% of on-site, on-sale revenue if you're in one of these categories. Now, if you are an inn, now I suspect in the U.S. Virgin Islands, there might very well be some nice little boutique hotels or bed and breakfasts around, but also have a very robust restaurant inside of them. What you're going to have to do in that particular instance is show that at least 33% of your revenue came from on-site sale of food and beverage. So you can't be in a situation where you only had a small little breakfast bar or something like that that only generated about 10 or 20% of your revenue and qualify for the RRF. So they're actually requiring you to have a significant amount, but not a majority amount, but at least 33% of your gross receipts from direct sale to the public. Now, here's one escape clause for this. They recognize that if you opened in 2020 and you might qualify under this would have been probably calculation 3. And you have fell into one of these categories that you were absolutely forbidden to open a tasting room or a tap room or a distillery or a tasting room, then they're saying if you were anticipating doing that, you had opened a tap room and in an all good sense and all good faith had planned to have at least 33% of your gross receipts from on-site sales, but you had to pivot because there was no other option made available to you. You could not open that tap room, then they're going to let you apply. You're going to have to provide some documentation, an attestation that in fact you were planning to have at least 33% of your gross receipts in on-site sales to qualify for the fund. So this is getting into a little bit of that soft and squishy definitions here, but you probably want to know that you probably want to make certain that you've got a business plan sitting around somewhere that said, yeah, I was planning on doing about 40% of my revenue or at least 33% in on-site sales. If you were contemplating that and had to pivot, then you're going to be able to qualify. Now, where can you go to get help? Right now, this is still info only at this time. Go to this restaurants.sba.gov. I suspect that's going to turn into HTTPS when it goes live, but it is still sitting out there with an unsecured URL. There is a hotline. I will not read the number to you. You guys can read it out. It is important to note, though, that it's only staffed on Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time. And again, that's Eastern Daylight Time here. So there is a call center hotline that you can go to. We understand that on that portal, once it opens up, there's going to be chat box supports, the little agent that'll sit down there and probably respond to keywords to assist you. We understand that's going to be built into that portal. Again, you can pick the phone up and you can not only get assistance, but you can get applications via the telephone if you can't get access to the online portal for some reason, whether it's technology or broadband access or availability. And of course, once again, good commercial for SBDC offices is we're a resource partner of the SBA. They provide us with training, information about these programs. We're here to help you with those types of questions. So, depending on what island you're on, look up your local SBDC office, reach out to them. They will be able to help you get some answers to some questions that you may have. So definitions of this priority group. Now, how do you determine if you fall into the priority group? Again, you have to be a majority owned, minority business, woman-owned, veteran-owned, or socially and economically disadvantaged, actually socially or economically disadvantaged entity. The way you calculate that is you determine whether the majority of ownership is 50, you have to have 51% that's going to fall into that category. You could actually aggregate owners together to reach that 51% hurdle rate or hurdle number. Applicants only have to self-certify. So you don't have to have a formal veteran-owned business designation or woman-owned business designation or DBE designation. You just have to self-certify and attest that you, in fact, belong into that protected group or priority group. So there's self-certification. There's no special certification you have to go through, but they are going to ask you to attest to that. And if they find out subsequently you weren't really in that priority group, you may very well forfeit that award. So just make certain that when you do self-certify that you're being true to the application and true to the law, in the spirit of the law. So here's an example. This is an applicant that had 5 owners, all equal size owners. They all own 20%. 2 of them are veterans, and 1 is a socially and economically disadvantaged individual. You can take those 2 plus 1, 20 plus, or those 2 owners constitute 40% ownership. That other 1 owner is another 20%. Now you've got 60% ownership. Regardless of what designation the other 2 owners have, you're going to qualify because you have a majority owned priority, you're owned by a group is in the priority group. So as long as that totals to 51% or more, then you're going to fall into that priority group. So it's pretty simple math on that, is looking at your individual owners to see how that shakes out. Now, don't think you can go back out and reorganize your company in the next few days and redesignate who the owner is, and decide, oh, gee, we should have never had that as a 50-50 between me and my wife, because if it's 50-50 between you and your wife, that is not a woman owned, majority owned. It's a 50-50 owned, and you're not going to be in that first priority group. But don't go out and try to retroactively change your ownership to qualify for this. That's likely going to get caught by the SBA. They've been very clear about not trying to engineer your way into the priority group. Socially disadvantaged individuals are anybody who falls into those 5 broad categories down below. So these are generally recognized protected groups. So if you fall into any one of those designations, you are by definition going to be considered to be in that priority group. So that's actually pretty straightforward. And then economically disadvantaged, I think a lot of this falls into tribal communities, Indian reservations or Indian nations. This is basically an area where people do not have equal access to capital, other business services, other business support capabilities. And then that would qualify you there as an economically disadvantaged individual. So just about to wrap up this part of it, and we'll see if we've gotten some questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer some of those. Looks like we do. I wanted to kind of take you through the life cycle of some of these programs. Everything on that left-hand side, PPP, EIDL, the EIDL Advance, and variants of that. The debt relief program, which was debt relief payments if you had an SBA guaranteed loan. SVOG for shuttered shuttered performing arts. I'm drawing blanks on my acronyms here. Shuttered venue operators grant. There we go. The RRF, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. They've all had different changes, different progressions, evolutions. That's what this chart does. This may or may not be useful to you. I jokingly tell people if this ever becomes a trivia question at during happy hour some night, perhaps you'd have an answer here about when the debt relief program changed or when SVOG became available. But one important thing, couple things that are important to note here is PPP was extended from March 31st, but it was extended to May 31st. So there still is a good 5 weeks of PPP and a significant amount of money. Last time I checked, I haven't seen if SBA's published what they were through the weekend, but last week, as of the 18th, there was still over $50 billion available for PPP funds. At the rate they've been going, I suspect there's still over $40 billion available. So if you haven't either taken your first or second draw, get on that, because that's available to you. That deadline was extended to May 31st. I don't think they're going to extend it beyond that. I think that's probably going to be the end date for the PPP, because it looks like they might just about use up all those funds at about the end of May. Other thing, and this is something for restaurants particularly to be aware of, if you got an EIDL loan last year, SBA recently announced within the last month following things is that deferment period, which was originally 12 months on that EIDL loan that you got last year, has now been moved out to 24 months. So you get 12 more months of no debt or interest. Interest is going to accrue and get added back into your loan, but you don't have to make any payments on that loan for the first 24 months. If you got your EIDL loan this year, that deferment will be 18 months. So nobody's going to be forced to make an EIDL repayment plan in the year 2021. Now, some of you may have already started making payments on that, but you should have been notified that you no longer had to make those payments because of this extended deferment period. The other thing they did, and this is take this away if you've got an EIDL loan, jot this down, rivet it in your brain, because they've now changed how they're going to calculate that injury period. What they did last year is they calculated that injury period, assumed it over a 6-month period. Now, how did they get to that number? They told you to provide you with their gross receipts, less your cost to get goods sold to get to your gross margin. And that's what they based your loan amount on. Now, what they did is they provided that for 6 months of coverage. So when you did that calculation last year, they basically took that amount and cut it in half for 6 months, half of a year. Now what they're going to do is rather than divide that by 2, they're going to multiply that by 2. So the effect of that is going to be, for example, if you got an EIDL loan of $25,000 last year, you should have already received a note from the SBA saying, if you would like to, due to the fact that we've changed the method of calculating your injury period, you can get a larger loan. And now this is a loan, this isn't a grant, it doesn't have forgiveness. You're going to have to pay it back, and you have to pay every dollar back. But as far as a loan, if you're in some financial difficulties, it is difficult to find anything more attractive than an EIDL loan because it carries a 3.75% fixed annual or fixed interest rate, 30-year term, no payments for either those 24 or 18 months, depending on when you take that down. So even if you didn't participate last year thinking, I don't know if I need that money, but you might find a loan like that valuable, check into that, because this extension of this program and the size of it is going to allow a lot of businesses additional working capital to get back on their feet. And you can use that EIDL to do things like PPE, to build an outdoor facility, to build shields or pay for shields to meet COVID restrictions. Very generous usage for that EIDL program, and that is a great complement to a PPP loan or an RRF award, because they play in kind of different areas and complement each other. There's no restrictions on when you have to spend that EIDL loan. There's no restrictions on when you pay it back. You have to pay it back over a period of time, but you can advance pay it at no penalty. There's no loan program out there. If you're sitting here, look at this and saying, you know what, even with PPP and RRF, I can't quite get to the other side. Look into this EIDL gross up option for you, because there's a significant increase, a 4-fold increase of your total loan. You know, you're not going to get 4 times as much as what you got, but you could get, in my case earlier, where you said you got $25,000 last year, they're going to come back and tell you you're eligible for $100,000. And so you get another $75,000. That might go a long way to being able to get you back on your feet. And again, no payments on that until 2022. So that's how these programs can kind of start to work together with each other. Here's the status of each of the different programs as of, actually, it should have updated the date on here. It's actually as of today, because we just did update some dates in here. PPP is still active. It ends May 31st. EIDL operates through the end of December 31st. There's the link to go get that, to apply for that loan if you don't have it. If you have one, you should have received a notice from SBA that you could go in and increase that. You should have been getting that. You should have gotten that notice probably either on April 6th, 7th, or 8th, something like that. So once that went into effect on the 6th, they started notifying clients. I had a client that went in and applied and already has the number she knows that she's gonna get. They also had a supplemental targeted EIDL advance that was launched on April 22nd. That's another $5,000 for those people who had an EIDL advance that had already gotten their full $10,000 out of it. If they fell into a low income area, as the SBA designated, and had over 50% revenue reduction, then you're going to get another $5,000 grant now, or a grant, or advance, basically is a grant. But they're going to be notifying you of that as well. So that notification started happening, within the last week. The debt relief program is in place for any loans they get, and these are all SBA guaranteed loans. These are payments that they make on your behalf. They'll make for any new loan that gets written before approved by April or September 30th. They'll make the first 3 payments for you on that loan. So that debt relief program continues in effect. SVOG portal relaunched yesterday. By all accounts, it's operating, it certainly operated better than the first one, because it didn't operate it at all. But it's operating quite well, and people are able to get through and got their applications in. So we're getting good frontline feedback from our clients that have been using that portal. The program guide and sample application for the RRF has been published. Portals, we've now been notified, will open at noon on May 3rd. And you can register your company starting Friday at 9 a.m. These are the links here to get to either of these two programs. You can copy and paste those into your browser, and that will take you to the each of those particular portals. Again, the portal is still static right now for RRF, but you'll be able to apply, start your registration on Friday and your application on Monday. And you'll get this slide as well. These are just some links that I recommend you bookmark. This SBA.gov site doing a really good job of keeping information about all of the coronavirus relief options updated. They're fairly robust to link around to the other sites or other areas to pull down forms. The current revision of the RRF application form can be found at this link. I think you've seen this now probably 3 times in this presentation, but we thought we'd bring it here to this page to make it easier for you to navigate if you'd like to. For information application portal, go to restaurants.sba.gov. And once again, maybe be my final commercial, but you can always follow the webinars that are going on and workshops that are being provided by your SBDC. We're really trying to do that outreach to small businesses. And it looks like our colleagues in Virgin Island are doing what we're doing here in Georgia, which is trying to be as proactive as possible to get information out to people. So you might want to bookmark that as well and see if there's going to be a workshop coming up that will be of assistance to you. I know my colleague Howard and I will be doing another one of these tomorrow with the Georgia Restaurant Association and some Georgia government entities to bring everybody up to speed with what's going on to RRF. So you got a day head start on our colleagues here in Georgia. With that, we'll kind of reach the end of the presentation part here. We were a little bit longer than I had hoped to be with that, but hopefully we can answer some questions and look to me like seeing maybe some things queuing up in the chat room that maybe there are a few out there. So Howard or Mary Jo, do you want to? I know Howard, you've been monitoring this. Do we have any questions that we need to try to see if we can address?
We actually do indeed. Good afternoon, everyone. And we sort of held them all for you, Glenn.
That's great.
So here's one concerning the your special case. The special cases when it comes to those eligible entities for the RRF. Terry asked for a brewery tap room. For the on-site sales of food and beverage with respect to the 33% of gross receipts. Does that include taproom products like souvenirs as well as takeout beer? And I'll expound on this just a bit because the 33% is that number in order to make that entity eligible. So once you're eligible, I imagine you could include that, but can you include the souvenirs to reach that 33%?
So sale of merchandise. Well, that's on sale. Yeah, I think that's goods on sale. I don't, I mean, it covers sales of gross receipts. Gross receipts includes, memorabilia, postcards, T-shirts, hats, anything you might buy that's a souvenir. I think the SBA is going to accept that as an on sale. What they're really looking at is, are you a wholesaler or are you a retailer? So I think anything that's going through your retail cash register is going to qualify towards that 33%. What's your opinion on that, Howard? That's kind of my opinion. Don't you think SBA is going to interpret it that way?
Well, up to this point, they have been fairly liberal in terms of how they're interpreting things. They want to get the money out there. So sort of my heart says, yes, that will be the case. Now, if you took that to the extreme example where you describe yourself as a tap room and say 50% of your sales, 50% of that 33%, let's put it that way, are souvenirs, would that qualify? Perhaps not, but.
Yeah, here's what I would recommend is this is going to get, a question like that is going to come up. It just came up. It's going to come up again. I suspect the SBA will have that in frequently asked questions. So again, following that, and hitting you over the head with bookmark those links, I'd watch that and see if they start issuing some additional FAQs. I'll go back and look. I don't think they've made any new changes to the FAQs because I think they've been so focused on getting that portal up. But one thing to do, this is just a little bit of a key, is if you go and pull their FAQs down, anything that has changed is going to have an asterisk in front of it. Once again, they're doing a good job now of tagging changes from, it's almost like software release notes. It is, here are the things that are changed. So you can download that as a PDF, and as we all say in our office, Command F on a PDF, go do find, put an asterisk in there, and then just keep finding every asterisk in there, because those are the ones you're going to read to see that things have changed. But that might very well get some clarification in FAQs. I'd be pretty surprised if they don't try to be very, very generous there and say anything that goes through your cash register from your point of sale is probably going to be deemed, with some exception. I mean, you could be using your point of sale to move keg sales to restaurants. If that's the case, that rule wouldn't be followed. But generally speaking, what Howard said is true. The SBA has tried to take every option possible to rule in the favor of the small business owner. This one seems like a pretty easy one for them to rule on. But I'd say watch those FAQs. Just unfortunately, they've not ceded the definition of rulemaking to Howard and myself. We both are completely perplexed. We have no idea why they have not done that yet. If they did, we could save everybody a lot of aggravation. But I'm being facetious. But we will try to. We've been doing this for about a year now, and what we have observed is the SBA always takes the most liberal, generous approach towards interpretation of these rules.
And in addition to the FAQ that Glenn mentioned, if you scroll up a bit in the chat, I did put a link to the Restaurant Revitalization Funding Program Guide, which is another great source of information, both practical questions as well as technical questions. So that could be another source of information. Here's a question, Glenn, concerning citizenship. We know, when PPP first came out, and PPP too, there were, of course, specifics in there about citizenship, who could get the PPP. Does one need to be a U.S. citizen? It says from the U.S., but I imagine a U.S. citizen to qualify for the RRF.
No, you just have to have a valid tax ID number. So you either need to have an ITIN or an EIN or an SS or a social security number. You have to be a legal resident, first of all. You have to be a legal resident. And then you have to have a valid tax ID, because that's how they track you. That's how they track your application. That's how they know that you're not making you're not trying to double dip on applications. Generally speaking, loans from PPP standpoint, EIDL standpoint, for any of the funds, the grants, or in this case, the RRF, they loan the money at the EIN level or the tax ID level. So as long as you have a valid tax ID, then you're going to be able to qualify for this fund.
So here's another question concerning, again, those special cases at 33%. So just to sort of clarify that 33% is sort of the threshold you need to surpass to qualify.
That's right. That's right. They don't want a factory out there that's got an outlet store, for example, and it only sells 10% of it, only has 10% of its revenue through that outlet store. That's not going to qualify as a restaurant or serving food to the public. What they're really looking for is it needs to be a significant part, and by significant, 33% of your revenue of your business. And
so taking that a step further, if you have an in, this is a question from Leslie. And Leslie, let me know if I do get this question or your intent of the question correct. If you have a small in and you have 33% of your gross receipts that are from food and beverage, your calculation for your RRF award is based on your total gross receipts, not just a portion from food and beverage, correct?
That's right. That's right. You just to have that portion qualifying. So you have to have a significant amount of your business being in the sale of food and beverage. You don't have to apply it only that. That's my understanding. That's how you're interpreting this too, Howard. I've never seen any clarification other than gross receipts at the entity level. And you have to have that 33% threshold that you have to cross over.
Yes, that's how I say. On one hand, if it's clear that that you fall into the food category, you count all your revenues. If it's not clear, if you pass that 33% threshold, then again, you count all of your revenues on the calculation side. A question from Amy, and this is a bit specific, but Glenn is a master at the specifics. So what if she bought a business that closed? I'm not sure when she purchased it, uh, um, well, closed in March of 2020. So they purchased it prior to that. It closed in March of 2020, I guess, right at the onset of the pandemic. They had to do renovations to make it possible to reopen. I don't know if it's open as of yet. And Amy, if you are still on, please let us know if that restaurant has opened back up. But will the RRF cover the cost of of making the restaurant, I guess, COVID safe, if you will?
Uh,
So, and Amy does say it has opened back up. So
oh,
it
okay.
closed in March of 2020. They had to do renovations to comply with the health department COVID-19 specifications. Is reopened. Can they recoup some of those expenses?
Yeah, here's what, yes, and you will be able to. What you can't do is have a restaurant that's closed permanently and you have no intent to ever reopen it. There's no restaurant to revitalize. The restaurant's closed. It just didn't make it. And that's not what that fund is for. That fund is to allow you to get the necessary funds to get your restaurant to, let's say, CDC or local jurisdiction requirements for reopening, and then reopen. If you're not open and haven't been able to reopen and don't know exactly when, what you have to do is make a best guess, good faith estimate of when you're going to reopen, and tell the SBA that. They just want to know that you're going to use those funds to try to reopen that restaurant. If all you're going to do is do that to make up for whatever losses you had and then just close it down, then you're going to have to pay the difference, back. So, but there again, these programs have actually been pretty well named. The payroll protection plan or program was to protect your payroll. We had people who said, "Well, it doesn't cover this and that." It's like, that's why there was payroll in there. It was trying to protect your payroll. What are they trying to do with the restaurant revitalization fund? They're trying to get restaurants back on their feet by giving them basically working capital awards to do that. So, so again, if you're shuttered, if you close down and haven't reopened, you're going to need to tell them when you plan to reopen. And if you have reopened, that's fine. That's exactly what they want you to do. And then any costs that you had while you were closed down, you probably had rent payments. Maybe you're behind on the rent. You worked out something with your landlord to say, "Hey, look, government shut me down. I haven't been able to operate for 6 months. I can't make the rent payment." Most foreclosures and I'm drawing a blank on how you kick out a rental. Help me, Howard.
Eviction.
Eviction. There we go. Most eviction requirements have been suspended. With understanding that a lot of people were in this situation, not at no fault of their own, and so the money is being made available there to go and make that up. So, and another thing is going back to I think you go back to February 15th. If you had an expense that you came out of pocket to keep your business alive, you can reimburse yourself for that out of these funds as well. So not only is it to be used going forward for your business from an operating expense standpoint, but it's also to go back and to compensate you for money that you had to put in, again, at no fault of your own, just to keep your business in life sustaining mode. That's what that's for. Again, then I go back a little bit to think about that. You could be doing the cash and saying, by the time I reimburse myself, pay all my past rental fee or past due rent leases, get rid of the inventory that's spoiled, cover all of that, get back up and operating. I'm just not going to have much left from my grant. Well, then again, that's where that idle loan extension may come into play. Again, it's very friendly for your cash flow. And this is, again, I told you there'd be another commercial for SBDC. So here it is this is something an SBDC consultant could help you with on that cash flow planning, is figure out how you're going to ride this thing out with some good best case, and then maybe some worst case or middle case assumptions. Lean on them to help you calculate that, because that's what that's what we've all been trained and have skills to be able to do.
And actually, that's all the questions. And just to your last point, I think no, we have, sure, Derek, you can ask an EIDL question. So if we are having trouble with the processing of a woman-owned application, is there an avenue to pursue other than the endless calls and resubmitting the same forms, I imagine, to the SBA? So, Glenn?
Well, there's an 800 number. I think there will probably be an email address as well. Now, you may get all the 800 number and it may be dwarfed. I do not, I know they're bringing in additional, they may be just absolutely snowed under there. I just, we don't know. I mean, we've all sat on hold or had the callback, where the callback will be in 2 days or something like that. But there is an 800 number and they are staffing it. So they're trying to be as proactive in their outreach as possible. They're planning to do more of it for this RRF because I think one is they understand that they're going to have a lot more, lot more smaller businesses that may apply for this, and they're going to may need some help. And then secondly, it was key to why they didn't call this a grant, so they could assist you after you've applied. They will, if you look though, as you go through the program guides and all of that, they are saying that once you put that in there, there's not going to be an opportunity. If something is missing, it's possible they'll call you and let you fill in a blank somewhere, but they're not going to let you amend an application. So you really want to do your homework in advance. Make certain those numbers are accurate. You may not have a second shot at getting through this. They're really trying to take care of those people who did their, did their homework, did their due diligence, got their numbers together in good order, and applied with those numbers in good order, and then they'll process those through quickly. You look through those checklists that they've got there, or the list of items that you need to pull together. Don't leave anything else. Don't leave anything out, because if you do it at your own detriment. And they've been pretty clear. This is the one time that I've seen where they're very, very clear about it. This is kind of a one and done, one shot deal when you apply. So make certain I think I probably beat this dead horse to death here, but just make certain you get your numbers together and be clear about them. I can't be more, I can't emphasize that any more than I have make certain that you've done your due diligence on your numbers. You don't want to be out there because you missed a number somewhere and you cost yourself, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars perhaps, because this whole program is going to be, there's going to be some decent size awards that are going to come out of this program. And the idea is to make you as whole as possible to get you back on your feet. So that's I guess what I've got to say about that. So,
and Terry, I will add with the EIDL, it really matters, or is it a loan, a targeted advance, or a increase in the initial loan? They're typically pretty good in responding, perhaps not timely, but they're good in responding eventually. And sometimes the response may be a bit cryptic, but that's where if you reach out to the SBDC, just having experience working with a number of different EIDL applications or applicants, we could somehow decipher what they're actually asking for, and hopefully get you on that right road. So I say reach out to your local SBDC office.
Yeah, and I'm a good catch, Howard. I was emphasizing the RRF side of that, but yeah, EIDL, they've given a number of avenues for you to come back in for reconsideration or clarification. So yeah, I want to be very, very clear about that. I see Ted's about to join here. Ted, you guys probably reach out to the OD. You have an ODA interface that you reach out to on EIDL questions. Is that right, to resolve some issues?
Correct. Thank you guys for doing this. We really appreciate it. Yes, we work hand in hand with our local SBA representative. He's very, very involved with the SBDC. So any questions that come to us that are beyond our subject matter knowledge, we definitely pass them up to Wayne Huddleston, who's very well known in the territory. They do a great job of working with small businesses. And then if we can't answer at that level, we just keep bumping those questions up till we're able to get an answer. And although sometimes the answers might not be what the person who asked the question comes back, but we typically are able to get an answer sometime relatively quick.
The other thing too on EIDL is it is a loan. It does not have a forgiveness component to it. It's got a deferral period associated with it, but it's a straight up long-term loan. Very, very good business, very, very good financial terms associated with it. However, SBA's got a responsibility to perform some due diligence on your credit status. And so just as like any other loan, they're gonna do a credit check. They may very well go pull another credit if you're going to try to gross up your existing idle loan. So just be prepared for that. If you've got a freeze on your credit score or credit report, you might want to lift that. And then also understand that they've got criteria. And if you fail that criteria, we've had clients do that. It's just, they say, hey, you're too big of a risk. I don't think you'll ever be able to pay this back. That could happen too. And I think that's the case that Ted was alluding to. The answer may not be what you want to hear, but SBA has a fiduciary duty to the taxpayers of the United States to oversee their funds with some due diligence. And use the prudent man test, I think. And so they're doing that. They take that job seriously, and they will make those checks. So that's where you can sometimes run into an issue with an idle loan. And they don't do a credit check on PPP loans that I believe. I don't think any, because those are 100% guaranteed. So, and they are expecting those to be grants anyway. But that idle loan will have a credit check. They'll check on your credit worthiness. And we do not know what that magic number is on which score either. SBA, there was an Office of Inspector General report on the SBA's performance last year. And in there, the SBA asked that there was a number, obviously there is a number that they use, but they asked that be redacted because they did not want that out there because they may change it. They may have to change it. So they have not published it. And I've never even heard somebody tell me what they think the number is. So I won't, and if I did, I wouldn't say it anyway, because that's a good way for me to have to be looking for another job. So
one of the things that we see quite often in terms of folks not qualifying for these loans is the application is only going to be as good as the documents that are uploaded or sent to SBA. If you don't have the proper record keeping, if you don't have the proper financials, tax returns, whatever the case may be, chances are that it's not going to necessarily get approved right away, or if at all. One of the things that we deal with still to this day is a cash business, cash economy. So making sure that the reported revenues, income, costs are relevant enough so that you can get federal aid. And one of the things that we continue to teach and tout here in the territory is the importance of proper record keeping and making sure that everything is done, recorded, even the losses, so that in times like these, you have the ability to apply and you are eligible as a small business in the territory. So one of the things, I did have a quick question though for Amy. My interpretation is that she purchased that restaurant after it was already closed. And if that was the case, I don't believe the Restaurant Revitalization Fund will qualify because it was closed when she purchased it. Amy, if you're still on, can you clarify, did you purchase it after it was already closed? She may not be on.
That might be worthwhile looking into, Ted, because they do have that clause where they say a new owner can stand in the shoes of the previous owner. So if she has access to the previous owner's revenues for 2019, presumably it was in operation before then, be an interesting one to look at. That's going to be one of those that's going to come out in the FAQs, right? I mean, where they're going to go in and say, okay, we covered 98% of the cases and now we're whittling down these last few. But I think there's a fighting chance that they'd let you do that if you can get access to that money. So if you've got what they provided you in due diligence, the definition is they're making the award to the business, not to the individual. So if the business is basically the same, kind of operating the same as it was before you bought all of it, I think there's a good chance that they let you go back and look at their pre-pandemic and might let you qualify for that. Because if you think about this, and this, I've heard the SBA describe this, and I've seen it published in some of their descriptions of why they're making rulings, is that they're looking at it and saying, look, our objective here is to keep a restaurant going. And if it's been around for a while and it had a stop service at no fault of its own and the ownership changed because of it, we still want that restaurant, not necessarily that same set of owners, but that restaurant to survive. And so that would be a good one to check out as the FAQs mature on this. but I wouldn't give up on that one. I think that could very well be interpreted favorably in your favor.
Amy
Howard,
did say,
Yeah. Sorry,
Amy
go
did
ahead,
say
Mr.
that, I'm sorry.
yeah, Howard, what?
Amy did say they bought the restaurant after it was closed. And yes, we can access the previous owner's numbers. And I think that's the key, because if you look at the RRF application, they tell you, and if the SVOG is any indication, when you fill out that application online, you cannot move forward without answering the questions and uploading those documents. And part of that, those documentation is our tax returns, bank statements, printouts from the POS system. So if you have access to that from the prior owner, then that may be what you need.
Put it this way, if you got that information, I would apply. I mean, guess what? No puts you in the same situation as not applying. And I'm a big, as Howard knows, I use it all the time. Great Wayne Gretzky said, every shot I didn't take didn't go in. I'd take that shot. And I think you're going to have a very good likelihood of coming out with an award on that. So if you've got that data, go pull that together and do that prep work.
Okay, well, we've kept you guys, I believe, long enough. And those restaurant owners that are viewing this, they got to get ready and prep for dinner, right? So thank you guys very, very much. We really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule up there to collaborate with us. And one of the things that I want to make sure, as we put on our contact information, if there's any other questions that the folks on this webinar have, please reach out to SBDC here in the territory. We'll respond to you. And please, this video is going to be posted on our YouTube page. So if you have any other people that are business owners, restaurant owners, please refer them to the YouTube page to view this presentation, because the last thing we want to do is we want to make sure that the SBDC, the clients here in the territory are some of the first in line for this particular program. So thank you all. Mary Jo, did you want to add something?
Yes, I wanted to add that tomorrow afternoon, we have a webinar on the fundamentals of business credit. And starting on May the 12th, we have a webinar class called Next Level, the Basics of Business Plan Writing course. The early registration deadline for that class is tomorrow at 2 p.m. If you register by 2 p.m. tomorrow, the course will cost you only $99 for 10 weeks of intensive work. And if you miss that deadline for tomorrow, but you sign up by May the 7th, it'll only cost you $149. And on Thursday, we have the government contracting webinar with the Office of the Delegate, and that's on identifying funds for government contracting and grant monies. And that's at 12 noon. So you guys are in for a treat.
Great programs.
Yeah. Well, we were, Howard and I are happy to join you today. Wish we could have been there in person for the obvious reasons. But Ted and Mary Jo and Sharika, thank you so much for being good hosts. And we appreciated the opportunity to join you here today.
And before you guys go, there is a copy of the presentation in the chat, so you guys can download that, so you can review all the information that was shared today and share it with your friends. And we want to thank you all for being with us today. Thank you, Howard, and thank you, Glenn. Excellent job.
So long.
Okay, and with that, we will say goodbye to our audience, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.